At the very outset, I, on my behalf and on behalf of Shah-i-Hamadan Institute of Islamic Studies and Additional Informatics, New Delhi, extend warm welcome to the dignitaries on the dais and the distinguished participants in the audience for their positive response to our request to be with us in the inaugural function of this book release function to be organized by Shah-i-Hamadan Institute of Islamic Studies in collaboration with Additional Informatics, New Delhi. We are equally grateful to the man of the moment, Professor Hamidullah Marazi Sahab, who is presently Director, International School of Spiritual Studies at IUST, and who is in fact the author of the book. Professor Hamidullah Marazi is a formidable scholar on multidimensional aspects of Islamic history and culture, with special reference to Muslim philosophy and especially Imam, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. He has authored more than 60 books, and hundreds of his articles are available both in national and international journals, through refereed journals. He has been visiting fellow to different prominent academic institutions inside and outside India, and that way his frequent visits to all these centers, academic institutions, universities, and the interactions with the distinguished scholars had further enriched his vision, worldview, value system, and understanding of knowledge and learning. That has been enriched by virtue of his extraordinary visits to different and prominent academic institutions. His knowledge and learning has been equally acknowledged by the prominent scholars, especially the one who has written the foreword on the book from Malaysia and Indonesia. All those people who had recognized his knowledge, his contribution to the knowledge and learning, and different fundamental aspects of philosophy with special reference to Imam Ghazali. Professor Marazi is an acclaimed scholar on Muslim philosophy with special reference to Imam Ghazali. We have the honor to have been with him, with the man of stature, for almost 30 years, first as a friend, then subsequently as a teacher and researcher, and finally as a colleague at the Shah-i-Hamadan Institute of Islamic Studies, University of Kashmir, for a great period of time. Our 30 years association with Professor Hamidullah Marazi Sahab make us to realize some prominent aspects of the philosophy, Muslim philosophy, vis-a-vis the contribution of Hazrat Imam Ghazali to multidimensional aspects of learning and philosophical, components and understanding. That's what we have learned during our association, with Professor Hamidullah Marazi Sahab. Muslim pursuit of knowledge and learning, with special reference to philosophy, emerged both as a concept and a process in early Islamic period. And it owes its origin to the prominent medieval Islamic heritage, the concept, the prominent development of all these institutions. Muslims paid attention to these subjects at a time when there was not much flair for such type of studies, whether philosophical studies or, for that matter, the promotion of knowledge and learning. Even before the revelation of Holy Quran, mankind knew no difference between history and myth, facts and fictions. Even the greatest civilization in the world could not save their histories, their compositions from mythology itself. So Muslim scholars introduced such methods, techniques and tools that were instrumental in separating chaff from the grain and made a distinction between chalk and cheese and a distinction between pot and the pan, just to seek the pleasure of Allah. This was in fact a fundamental component of the Muslim contribution to knowledge and learning, with special philosophical approach and philosophical aptitude. We can never think of philosophy unless and until we have an eye on the techniques and the methods and the tools that have been introduced by Muslim scholars to identify the multidimensional aspects of philosophical pursuits that have been followed by distinguished scholars subsequently after these tools stand introduced by the Muslim scholars. And all these tools were introduced not only to ensure objectivity in the research aptitude of the scholars, but simply to seek the pleasure of Allah itself. One of the prominent scholars, As-Sakhawi, in his renowned work Al-Alan bil-Tawbih liman Zammat Tariq, he says, وَأَمَّا غَايَةُ الْعِلْمِ فَلْتَرْجَعَ لِرَضَاءِ اللَّهِ. The basic component, the purpose of this acquisition of knowledge was simply to seek the pleasure of Allah. And all this while advocating for scientific explorations, experimentations, and observations. Al-Biruni, who came from that part of the world, stayed in India for a greater period of time, not less than 32 years. And during this period, he emphasized and said, Laisa khabal kal ayam. Simple eyewitness is not equal to a physical report that you see. Any simple reporting is not equal to eyewitness. What somebody reports to you is not equal to what actually you see with your own eyes. This, in fact, has produced some sort of concern vis-a-vis the studies of historical studies and philosophical studies. Two things I would like to share, and with that I will conclude. All these scholars, inspired by the abiding conviction that Islam is the religion ordained by Allah, the Quran is the book of Allah, that the universe is the creation of Allah. As such, no scientific explorations, experimentations, philosophical studies remain mere investigations or philosophical studies, but became a sacred duty for the Muslim scholars. While this conviction in mind, that Islam is the God-oriented religion, that the Quran is the book of Allah, that the universe is the creation of Allah, these were the three components that had molded and changed the perspective and the vision and worldview of the Muslim scholars while working on all these subjects. Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, his Tahafatul Falsafa, besides many other books that he has written, is one of the prominent reference to such type of approach, to such type of techniques that had been used during his period. In continuation to medieval Islamic heritage, we have a good number of scholars, like Imam Abu Yusuf, who had written a book and dedicated the ruler of Abbasid period, Harun Rashid, known as Kitab al-Kharaj. And at the same time, the man who came from Central Asia, stayed in India, Kashmir, and responsible for the propagation, expansion, and consolidation of Islam in this part of the world, Hazrat Amir Kabir Mir Shah-i-Hamadan. Besides other works, he came and wrote a book, what we call Zakhiratul Muluk. Both these books were, and this was dedicated to the kings and rulers, just to ensure common good and the well-being of the community, well-being of the state. These were the two books. And Imam Ghazali is the man who has written a book, what we usually call as Nasihatul Muluk. That book was dedicated to the last ruler of Seljuk dynasty, Sultan Sanjar. And this book was dedicated with the intention that all good and political stability and the social order is to be maintained. These were the guidelines that they had promoted, that they had provided.
At the very outset, I must say it's indeed a matter of great privilege and honor for me to be here on this prestigious, rather very sacred occasion and be able to share the days with the brilliant and prolific writers. The truth is, I didn't know that I'll be one among sitting with the dignitaries on the dais. I would have been perhaps better off staying among the audience and listening very quietly and patiently, prolific writers like Mr. Muhammad Maroof Saab. Anyway, I'm glad that I have had this opportunity to be here. But as most of you know, that I am primarily a student of management and organizational behavior and trained in equations, logic, designing organization structures and strategies. And one of the fundamental questions when we deal with organization structures, we deal with why do people behave the way they do and what psychological and social factors influence them. It was one of the questions that intrigued me for a long period of time as a young student of management. And then finally, I had an opportunity of interacting with the brilliant minds, scholars from different areas, from the area of psychology, sociology, and the philosophy, professors like Professor Hamid Naseem Rafiabadi Saab, with whom my interaction is spread on more than 30 years, And I came to know that it's very difficult to understand human nature and the factors which influence their performance and their behavior in different organizational settings without understanding the philosophy. And one of the first books that I came across was a philosophy by James L. Christian. And when I opened the first page, it starts with a brief story which I would like to share with you. Story is titled as Zorba the Greek, a young little girl who grew up around philosophers, used to play with them in Greek, and then one day she walked into the room of a scholar, asked him, Baba, tell me, why do people die? Why do these young die? Where do they go? And a philosopher looked at this young girl, said, Zorba, I don't know. Now the girl turns back and asks him, what do these books tell you? If they don't tell you, why do people die? The exact line is, what the hell do they tell you? If they don't tell you, why do people die? Now the scholar kind of woke up. He looked back at this girl and told her, Zorba, if they don't tell me, why do people die? But they tell me about the curiosity. They tell me about the pain and frustration, of the people who cannot answer questions like you. So it's primarily the curiosity, it is the question, not the answer, where from, I think, the knowledge, the wisdom, the experience emanates. So coming back to this area that I wanted to know as to why and how we can improve efficiency in organizational settings. And I turned to some of my friends, like Professor Marazi, and then during my interaction with him, I learned that it's very important to have that understanding. And here it reminds me of John Nash, a mathematician, which I would like to quote him, when it comes to philosophy. While receiving Nobel Prize, he said, I have always believed in equations and logic. That's what we do as mathematicians and economists. We deal with the data and the numbers. But it's only, and my quest has taken me to physical and metaphysical discoveries, but it's only in the equation of love. It's only in the equation of connection with the nature, with the God, that you find the greatest truth. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, I'm not a student of philosophy, and especially where we have a young and a hope for our future, Amina Sting, and who has the academic grace and dignity to come up with such a remarkable book. When, I was intrigued by the title of the book, Muslim Philosophy Before and After Ghazali. What I understand, all of you are very learned here, it primarily is divided, rather it can be divided, to begin with, in 3 periods if we really want to understand it. Otherwise, it creates a kind of a confusion when we go through certain articles and review the literature on it. So I prefer to divide it, in certain periods, the formative period, classical period, and the post-classical period. And generally speaking, my understanding is it refers to the philosophical tradition that developed in the Muslim world from 18th, 15th century. And during the formative period, Muslim philosophers were heavily influenced by Greek philosophy, particularly by the works of, you have quoted them, works of Plato and Aristotle, which were translated into Arabic during the Islamic Golden Age. And then Islamic philosophers, one of the important points which I would like to emphasize, that is something very, very important, the importance of knowledge and education, as and believed that the pursuit of knowledge was a religious duty. And some of the major figures in Islamic philosophy include Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, and Ibn Rushd. Their works were, highly influential not only in the Muslim world but also in Europe during the medieval period, where they were translated into Latin and later on studied by many, European scholars such as Thomas Aquinas. Also, what I have come across that Muslim philosophers sought to reconcile, the teachings of Islam with Greek philosophy in earlier periods and developed their own philosophical systems and ideas and made huge and remarkable contribution to the fields such as metaphysics, epistemology, logic, ethics, and political philosophy. And the another point which I want to make here that Islamic philosophy is also characterized by a strong focus on reason and rational inquiry and the belief that the natural world can be understood, through observation and rational analysis. And now Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, the era of, was 10th century, was a prominent Muslim philosopher, theologian, and a mystic who lived during the Islamic Golden Age and is widely recognized as one of the most influential Muslim thinkers in our history. And his works have had a profound impact on Islamic philosophy and theology. And one of the works, The Incoherence of the Philosophers, particularly those of, in that he critiques the philosophical methods, as you have heard, and ideas of his predecessors, particularly those of Aristotle and Neo-Platonists. He argues that their ideas are not comparable with Islamic theology, and a reason alone cannot provide a complete understanding of the universe. Ladies and gentlemen, and another work, Al-Ghazali's work, was the revival of religious science. Al-Ghazali's very most extensive and comprehensive guide to Islamic spirituality and the ethics, which deals with a wide range of religious, ethical topics, including worship, morality, spirituality, mysticism, and is considered as a classic in Islamic literature. I believe in today's contemporary era, when we talk of artificial intelligence, big data analytics, machine learning, cybersecurity issues, every now and then, and on the other hand, we are confronted with the issues like drug menace, drug addiction, and then climate degradation, the abuse that we have done over a long period of time to the nature, to this earth. And I think Islamic philosophy offers a solution to the civilizational and the global crisis. So it is important for all of us, for the young scholars, to turn to his works, which were widely read and debated during his lifetime and continue to be studied and discussed in the development of Islamic philosophy. I believe that his ideas, on the limits of reason and the importance of spiritual experience have also had a very deep impact on Western philosophy and theology, and is genuinely considered a major figure in the development of Islamic philosophy, theology, and mysticism, and his ideas continue to shape the way that many Muslims think about philosophy, theology, and spirituality. And above all, as I said, that Professor Marazi Saab, his understanding of the subject, and then coming up with a book in these difficult times, in a very chaotic era, actually demands, congratulations. And it is, I know, an effort of thousands of hours of work. But what I observe, I think he has the confidence that comes with character, and Professor Marazi has the grace that comes with humility, and he has the humor that comes with wisdom. And I feel privileged, always to be in his company and have the pleasure of, going and dwelling into certain new things that I have really not come across earlier. But all these seminars, these workshops, these book release functions, to me, has a huge meaning and impact on the young minds. Because when it comes to the university, primarily university is a place where students come from every quarter for every kind of a knowledge. It's a place for the communication and circulation of a thought. It's a place where discoveries are verified, and it's a place where innovations are made and errors are rectified, and with the collision of mind with mind. And that's why we are here. Once again, I am thankful to you for giving me this opportunity and giving me an opportunity of coming over.
Well, Francis Bacon has said Reading maketh a man full, conference a ready man, and writing an exact man. By saying so, he was talking about the importance of writing in our life. However skillful you are in speaking, however competent you are in listening, when it comes to writing, you have to have a skill which is not easily available to all. Writing does not mean only to pen down your thoughts in words. It does not only mean, if I may use a technical term, accuracy of language. It involves fluency in writing. What you say and what you write must make sense. And it's not everybody's cup of tea. Great writers in the world would, until their publications, they would read and edit their writings. Even Dr. Johnson, by far the best essayist in the world, he would not be satisfied with his writing. Therefore, when a budding writer like Amina gives you a book and it goes to the public eye, we must all appreciate her. We must all admire her, that there is something in her which is coming out slowly and sturdily. And all of us should wish her the best of luck in future books. I'm seeing her for the first time, believe me. I didn't ask even Marazi Saab whether she was here, but I could recognize her from a distance. I was introduced to her through her book, The Masquerade. And I wondered how a small mind could go deeper into her own life and the life of the world and come out with ideas which are so brilliant, which are so demanding in comprehension, that you would sit together and read and then try to fathom her mind. Honestly speaking, it has not been an easy task for me as well. But somehow, when you get familiar to the author, you try to figure out what she is talking about. In the new book, which is prose poetry, this genre isn't any new to the English world. It's, as you would say, poetry written in prose. Except the line break, you have everything there. You have alliteration, you have repetition, you have metaphor, you have other figures of speech that the writers use. But when you read, you have to create the music in prose. That is the hallmark of all prose poetry. In the 17th century, Japan introduced this as one of the most important genres in poetry. Mao-tzu melded it with haiku. And later on, Oscar Wilde, the British writer, and American poet and fiction writer, Edgar Allan Poe, also used it. Shakespeare had done it already. What actually is very important about it, the author, the writer, the poet feels free to express himself or herself. That once you have the book in hand, you'll actually first of all ponder into the title itself, Bottomless Hourglass. What does it mean? And once you look at the back, where she's quoting from where from she took the title, you'll find that Amina, from this tender age, is quite sensible in delving deep first into her own life, the purpose of life, the philosophy of life, and then to gauge out what is the meaning in life. And I was reminded of a Kashmiri phrase when I first looked at the glass. Kranjil point, when you try to take water in a wicker basket, which is not possible. So what would the bottomless glass do? It will spill from the bottom. And now, what do you get from the bottom? Gather it, understand it, and you will get the meaning. Thank you very much.
हमीद साहब की बरकत से हम आज गज़ाली पे फिर पर बात कर रहे हैं. If we have not read Ghazali, at least selections, we have missed to visit the Taj Mahal of Islamic spirituality and intellectuality. Just a preview or snapshot of the wonder of the medieval world, Ghazali, so that we better appreciate why Mahfil with Professor Hamid is important and how the Naseem from Tus can reinvigorate our minds and hearts. मराज क्या कमराज क्या सारी दुनिया आज भी गज़ाली की मोहताज है और इकबाल को शिकायत है फ़लसफ़ा तो रह गया तलक़ीन गज़ाली ना रही. अब ये तलक़ीन गज़ाली क्या चीज़ है? It could be argued in a very post-modern way, post-Heideggerian way, that contemplative thinking. Now उसके लिए अच्छा टाइम नहीं है यहाँ जल्दी. Ghazali is the most influential Muslim philosopher, theologian and Sufi, all in one, come I mean. He was no ordinary mind in jurisprudence. He is called second Shafi. 15 years only he taught, but then he wrote so much, it is said that daily around 16 pages. It's called a मौजज़ा है रसूल सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम का गज़ाली की ज़ात और इस्लाम के लिए हुज्जत मानी जाती है. गज़ाली ने इस्लाम कबूल किया इसलिए इस्लाम गलत नहीं हो सकता. That's what is the proof of Islam. So Ghazali is one of the most towering minds in the world. His classification of sciences, his endorsement of logic and Sufism have become permanent features of Islamic tradition. Without him, we cannot read Aquinas, the greatest medieval Christian thinker. He anticipated on certain points Descartes, Hume, Kant, and many other major Western philosophers. Reading Ghazali, one reads essentially all Islamic sciences. He was the most innovative vice-chancellor of Muslim seminaries, the most sought-after scholar in his later age. His empire of mind and spirit forced cognizance by the rulers and the masses. He is the proof that Islam is no human phenomenon. New Age atheists are those who think they need no religion or mysticism have bypassed the challenge of Ghazali. They cannot be allowed to do it. Dr. Ishaq Musa, whom Professor Rafi Abadi quotes, says, very importantly, kindly note it, I quote, that the most important aspect about Al-Ghazali is the love for truth and reality. his concern to reach it and his endeavor to discover it. Al-Ghazali has set an example of a unique nature of human experience which opens before a man a method and way of discussion, discovery, renunciation and innovation. In this way, Ghazali is not only the proof of Islam but also a proof of a greater bravery and discovery of man. That's why he belongs to the world. और कांट पे उसका so much influence. Now that is a point now being debated. श्रीलंका के एक प्रोफेसर ने एक बहुत खूबसूरत बात की. उस बात ये थी कि अगर अचानक स्पेस से कोई आता है आदमी और दुनिया और हमें उसको दिखाना है कि इंसान ने अब तक क्या किया, तो व्हाट विल वी प्रेजेंट हिम, कौन सी बुक देंगे? वी हैव टू प्रेजेंट हिम ओनली वन बुक है, जस्ट फ्यू, बहुत कम टाइम है. तो उसने कहा हम उसको इकबाल का सारा कलाम देंगे. मतलब दैट इज़ द ग्रेट ग्लोरी ऑफ इकबाल whom so few people now care to read properly. बट आई थिंक अगर पहले आए होते तो गज़ाली की उनको देते. बल्कि कहा गया है कि अगर if by some accident all books are lost in Islamic tradition, with Ihya we could revive all Islamic traditions in principle. Ghazali's book. So that is Ghazali. Now why is Ghazali important for all of us here? Ghazali is all about self-negation and rights of revelation. Ba Muhammad Hushyar, when the self ceases talking, revelation or its allied phenomena descend. Hamid Saab has elaborately discussed this idea there. Can we consent right now to go barefooted or work with a sweeper or wear rags or join farmer in farming operations, or we would hesitate? This is the question to all of us. But Ghazali did all this in a way. He wore rags and then God came to him. He discovered God. That is the called proper discovery of religion. A good student would not be too well groomed. A good student would not be too well groomed, marked Ghazali. Ghazali का point था कि यमिस student ज़बरदस्त पे पला वाला असल लगे सोचते मिस entry करा पंजा. He was not admitted. तो वो like ना थोड़ा कैसे आसे ये रास्खंड रोम आदि सुश हवा इमिस seriousness about studies. So he was a master psychologist. He has anticipated and corrected Freud at places. Let us note 5 key areas where Ghazali speaks to all of us. And these have been highlighted time and again in various books of Professor Hamid Nasim. Need to be philosophers. Ye point hai. Ghazali is a philosopher. Against the attacks of religious fanatics who are opposed to any kind of philosophical activities, Al-Kindi has been quoted. In fact, he began that great tradition of philosophy in Muslim tradition. He maintains that philosophy is a necessity and not a luxury. He tells the fanatics that they must declare philosophizing either necessary or unnecessary. If it is necessary, they must be willing to go in search of it. On the other hand, if they declare that it is unnecessary, they must give reasons and arguments to prove their contention. Now, to give reasons and arguments implies an act of philosophizing, and hence philosophy is necessary in either case. But note, he is not for a rationalism, which we now know, but what we call that he's for that theonomous reason, contemplative thinking, death cognizant life, which Heidegger would also say. Philosophy is preparation for death from Socrates to Heidegger. That has to be kept in. That's why philosophy is part of, basically, this is hikmah. Prophet would teach it in Islamic tradition. It's not a rational, logical, that analytical thing only. It has something to do with vision, darshan, to see reality, to become one. Most of the, and Ghazali's point, most of the branches of religious knowledge are rational in the opinion of those who know them. And most of the branches of rational knowledge are religious in the eyes of those who know them. That's why also Whitehead said, ages of faith are the ages of rationalism.